Okay, for your PSMT, after the title, Introduction and Mathematical Concepts and Techniques, would come observations. Observations in the criteria is marked as an A for justified statements of important observations. An observation is anything that you can read in the task or stimulus. That's an observation. So if you read that the garden that you're designing has to be 50 square meters, that's an observation. Okay, you read it. It was told to you that it had to be that. If you read that the height of your ceilings must be 2.4 meters, that's an observation. Anything that you can read or see. Equally, anything that you can research or find out online or in the real world is also an observation. So, for example, if the assignment said standard ceiling height, you go and find out a standard ceiling height is 2.4 meters. That's an observation. Right? You didn't assume that, you observed that by reading it somewhere. Now, to hit this justified section of your A criteria, you must explain why the observation is important. You must justify that observation. For example, the ceiling height is 2.4 meters. That's an observation. This task told me that. This is important because without this, I would not be able to find the area of the walls to determine how much wallpaper I needed. So we're justifying the reason for having that. So you could observe that the sky is blue. It has absolutely nothing to do with your math assignment. So you can't justify that important observation. So you're actually telling the person how this affects the math. How does this observation help you or direct you in what you need to do? Why is this information important? Why do you need it? Now, if I was you, I would be using a table for my observations as opposed to dot points or a paragraph. The reason being is that this second column means that you will at least attempt to justify your statements. So you put your observation here. I observed that the task says the garden must be 50 square meters. This is important because it will dictate the actual size of the garden that I can use and the space that I have available for my design elements. Okay, by having this extra column in here, it forces you to attempt to justify, to give a reason, and then you won't forget to actually put that in. All right. Observations can also be found or written throughout the PSMT itself, so your teacher could mark other areas of the PSMT as observations that you have made. So if you don't have them all in here, if you're explaining what you're doing and why you're doing it as you move throughout your PSMT, you could be hitting observations in other areas as well. But I would still have this section. Now let's look at some examples. So you can see this student has a column with the observation. It is observed that, and then each of these complete that sentence. And then the second column, this is important because, and then each of these complete that sentence. So pause the video, have a read. You can see that the observation was this, and you can see what they're going to do with that observation or why they needed that observation. Another student's example, observations, then they've got a reference. Where did they get this information from? And then they've written impact. What is the impact of this observation? Okay, so they have justified the observation by stating an impact. Why is this important? Why do we need to know this? Referencing the observation is also a way of justifying where did this information come from.